Alright, hello students. I'm going to go ahead and start the video today for MLA and I don't know if I can get all this done in one video. It might take a couple because there's a good bit to this, but let's try to see how much we can get through right now. So first I want to start with the works cited page itself, because the works cited page is kind of what you should do pretty soon. As soon as you've done your searching for your sources, you should put your sources into the proper format on the works cited page. You really ought to do that first so that you know what to draw from for citing that stuff in your actual text. So the first thing you should do is your works cited page. So let's go ahead and take a look at that. So here's essentially what it looks like. A works cited entry should have an author first, and the author should start with the last name, comma, first name, and then if they have an initial, you put that in there and then a period. Okay. Then you have the title of the source. So see, this is Purdue Owl, by the way, and Purdue Owl is very easy to find. All you got to do is type in the search window in the word owl, and Purdue Owl will come up right away. Or if you start to type in the word Purdue, it'll come up right away. And then when it comes up in the search engine, most likely the very thing at the top is going to be Purdue Owl MLA source material. So it'll take you right to this pretty much. So anyway, but in case it doesn't take you to the right page, we are actually in this, let's see, let me make sure I'm telling you right here, the formatting and style guide. Yeah. So this is the formatting and style guide right here. Okay, and then you go down here and it tells you what goes where. So the first thing is the author. Second thing is the title of the source. Now notice the title of the source is going to be in italics if it's a book. If it's a larger piece of work like a book or a movie or something like that, then it's going to be in italics, italicized. And it's going to have a period at the end, and all the major words in it should be capitalized. Then you have the, if it's a website, then the website would be in italics. But the article from a website would be in quotation marks. Okay, so if it's a larger piece of work, it's going to be in italics, like these two are. If it's a smaller piece of work, like an article from a magazine instead of the whole magazine, or a chapter from a book, or a scene from a movie. In other words, if it's a smaller part of a whole, then it's going to be like this, in quotation marks. Again, you're going to capitalize all the major words in it. Notice 2 is not capitalized, but the rest of the words are. Okay. Periodical, like a magazine or whatever, again, the article is in quotation marks, but notice the name of the actual magazine or journal, whatever it is, as you can see, is italicized. Song or a piece of music on an album is going to be in quotation marks again. Like I said, that's the smaller part, right? The name of the title itself, of course, is going to be, the piece of the actual album is going to be in italics. A part of something bigger is in quotation marks. So just try to remember it that way. If it is the whole thing, like the whole album, the whole movie, the whole book, then it's italicized. If it's a part of a whole, then you put it in quotation marks. Okay? The title of the container. Unlike earlier versions, the 8th edition refers to containers, which are the larger holes in which the source is located. So that's just what I was just talking about. So the article, again, this is like the article, and then this is, or maybe in this case it might be a chapter or whatever, and then the whole is the book itself. So this is a short story. You can see this is a vintage book of contemporary American short stories. So that's the whole, a whole book of short stories, and then the single short story that this is referring to is in quotation marks. So first is your author, last name first, first name second, last, period. Article title or title of the part of the smaller part of the whole, the sub part of the container, in other words, is in quotation marks with a period inside the quotation mark. Remember, that's always inside. And then the whole, or the book, the larger piece, the larger container, as they're calling it now, the larger container that the smaller part came from is in italics. And that comes next. And then after that, the container might be a television series, like it says here. Container might also be a website that has smaller articles within it. So that's how that works. Some cases, container might be a larger container. So here's a article. Here's the episode. In this case, it's a TV episodes. So here you got an episode, and the episode is from this larger container that is the title of the whole series, and then that is actually subcategorized within the even larger container of Netflix, because Netflix has all of these, and then this one has this. So it's like nested within each other, you might say. Okay, so same thing works with a database. This is an example of a database. So you would think of the database itself like ProQuest. That's the name of the database. So the database is the biggest container. Then within that container is a smaller container known as a single journal, in this case the historical journal. And then within that is the smallest part, which is the actual journal article. Okay, so see how that works? They kind of nest within each other. Okay, other contributors. In addition to the author, there may be other contributors to the source who should be cited, such as editors, illustrators, translators, and so forth. So in those kinds of things, they go in there right after the article title. Notice here it's translated by Richard Howard. So that's the part that's additional there, translated by Richard Howard. And then it goes into the name of the publisher and then the date of publication. Here's another one. Annotated with an introduction by Vera Navarro. So again, that's when somebody else is getting some credit in there, then you put them in there after the title. Notice here the title is Jacob's Room. And then right after the title is the person who's getting additional credit, the additional person getting credit. And that additional person, like it says up here, might be an editor, illustrator, translator, stuff like that. Annotated here. Okay, the version, the Bible was going to have the King James Version here. It's going to note the version here. If it's a, excuse me. If it is something like this, in this case, it's an edition, 3rd edition, 5th edition, 20th edition, whatever. That's going to go right in here before, right after the article, the title, and before the publication company. Okay. When you have numbers, such as like journals, oftentimes those journals online and online magazines, periodicals and stuff will have things like volume number and issue number. That's what this is. Volume number 6 and then issue number 2. That's how those are written. Okay. And then here you got season 2, episode 21. So that's like another numerical breakdown. Or here's volume 2. Okay, so those come after those come right before the producer or the producer or the publisher, whoever it might be, whatever the case is. And then you have the publisher. The publisher is always going to be who basically puts out the whole thing. So Museum of Modern Art here is one. American College of Obstetrics and Gynecologists. D Productions and Universal Media Studios. So that's the producers. That's the company or the business that's putting the whole thing out there. They are the publisher of the whole thing. Okay, and then finally you're going to have the date of publication, which may be just a year, or like in this one, it might be a full date. If it's a full date, you put it in this format: day first, then month, then year. Location. You should be as specific as possible in identifying a work's location. In an essay, in a book, or an article in a journal should have the page numbers included. So notice it has PP for pages, and then it has the page range, 74 to 94. Okay. Also an online work should include the URL, just like you see here. It should have the www dot whatever. And it also should have, like in this case, it's got the Museum of Modern Art, and then it's got where that place is, New York. Date of publication, original publication, and then if a source has been published on more than one date, the writer may want to include both dates if it will provide the reader with necessary helpful information. So this is more or less optional. You don't necessarily have to have 2 dates, but you could put 2 dates if it was actually published on 2 different dates. City of publication, again, is something you can put in there if you want to, but it does not necessarily have to be anymore. It used to be required, but now it's just optional. So you can do with or without the city. And then also it says here, when you cite an online source, the MLA handbook recommends including a date of access on which you access material, since an online work may change or move at any time. So it's good to have the access date in this format at the very end after your actual URL. Yeah, here's the URL. The URL must be there. The date of access can be or does not have to be. I've also heard of it as being that the date of access should be there if you don't have another date up here. So you might think of it that way, but in this case, they've got a date here and they've got a date here. So that's kind of up to you. You don't have to have this in there, but if you think it'll be help for clarity, you can put it in there. DOI, or Digital Object Identifier, is a series of digits and letters that leads to a location of an online source. Might be journal articles, right? So if they give you a DOI number, if you go in there and you get a journal, and that journal actually lists a DOI number, then that's what you should put instead of the URL. You would not have to have a URL. You would just put the DOI number, and that, because like it says here, that way, if the source were to ever change the URL, the DOI should still be the same. Okay. Now, that's the works cited page. Now, I want you to also see what a works cited page should look like, since that's what we're talking about. So let's take a look at a works cited page. You notice that's a little further down there. Let me make this bigger. Excuse my coughing. I got some phlegm or something going on here. Okay, so here you have a sample works cited page. The sample works cited page should look just like this. It should look exactly like all the rest of your writing. It should not be there shouldn't be anything special done with it as far as like making anything in bold or italicizing anything other than the stuff you're supposed to italicize here, down here, in the actual entries. But like the title here, you should have the words works cited, and it should be at the center at the top with both words capitalized. And even if you only have one entry, it should still say works. It should still have an S on it. You also should consider this as the very last page of your essay, which means it should have a page number up here in the header. This is where it normally would be up right around in here in the header. So it should have the last page number of your essay in there. And this should be a page all to itself. Do not start your works cited page like at the bottom of the last page of your essay, separated by several spaces. It should be, if you have a page 5 of your essay, and if you only got one paragraph on page 5, don't just go down a few spaces and start your works cited at the bottom of page 5. You need to go on to page 6 and make the works cited page all by itself on page 6. It should always be its own page. Okay, does everybody understand that? Hopefully, make sure your works cited page is all by itself as the last page of your paper with the proper page numbering up here in the header. Okay, notice that it has what we've talked about. It has the last name first, comma, first name, period of the author is first, and then in quotation marks you have the title of the smaller piece, the article. Then you have in italics the title of the periodical came from, in this case, the New York Times magazine, the date of the publication of the magazine, and then notice this obviously was retrieved off of the internet, so you'd put down the entire URL, and then you could, or would not have to, but you could put the date of access. Okay, so just make sure your URL is there. Whether your date of access is or isn't doesn't matter so much as making sure your URL needs to be there for online stuff. Okay, notice that it has this thing called hanging indent. That's why there's this space difference here between Dean and York. That's called hanging indent. So the author's last name should be at the far left of the page, but if it has to drop down to a second line like this one, or a third line, or a fourth line, then those second, third, and fourth lines should be indented in 5 times, or in other words, a tab. Tab those in. Then you go to your next entry. It comes back out here with the author to the left margin, and then tabs in again when it goes down to the second line and beyond. Okay, so that's called hanging indent. You want that to look just like that for each entry. Notice that the entries are in alphabetical order according to the first word. D, E, F, G. Now here's different. Why is this not alphabetized according to Ann? Well, like I told you on the video I did yesterday, Ann is one of them little articles. It's called an article. It's a, an, or the. And when your title starts with the word a, an, or the, you don't go by that. You go by the next word, which in this case has the I starting it. So E, F, G, H, I, J, K, L, M, N. Now, wonder what these are. Anybody have an idea what this is? I'll give you a second to think about it. 1,000. Okay, that's right. If you thought, if it occurred to you that this basically just is like ditto marks. It tells you that this author for this piece is the same as the one above. So you use 3 dashes to show that it's basically like a ditto marks to show that this author is the same one for this one as well. So that's what that means. Then so L, M, N, O, P, Q, R, R, E, R, E, V, R, E, G. So you notice when you just alphabetize it according to the first word. If your first words are the same, you alphabetize it according to the next word, right? So notice in this one here, it's written by the same person. So it's alphabetized not by the person's name, but by the title. A first, G second, right? So you alphabetize it by whatever comes next. And then in this case, you have S and then a U. So it depends on how many of these you have, but obviously this is a very good example of what a paper should look like, or I mean a works cited page should look like. Notice that it is all double spaced. You double space this just like you do your essay. Every single thing in your essay from the very beginning where your name is in the heading all the way to the very last word or last line of the works cited page should be double spaced. No extra spaces anywhere. No extra spaces here before or after the works cited title. There should be no extra spaces before or after your main title of your actual essay. You know, in other words, you shouldn't have like your heading and then 3 spaces or 2 spaces or extra spaces before you put the title of your main paper too. Your main title. Okay. So that is how to do the works cited page. And since that's a lot of information, I'm going to go ahead and stop this video here. And then I'll probably do another video either later today or tomorrow to help you understand how to do your in-text citations. Because remember, the works cited page, you should do that first anyway. Do the works cited page here first. After you found your sources, put them on your works cited page and do it first. Then I'll show you in the next video how to actually refer to those sources within your text of your paper. Got it? I'll talk to you in the next video.